Why is it has silence?
Test. Test. All right, we're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. April 24th zoning commission meeting. If everyone please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. Johnson, we have a roll call, please.
Yep, Kaban,
Here.
Heine,
Here.
Matlock,
Here.
Morris,
Yes.
Hirschfeld. Mr. Hirschfeld is not present. We do have a quorum.
All right. If I speak loud enough, can everybody hear me? All right. Instead of trying to hold the mic in front of me, we're gonna do that for right now. But if it gets to the point, let me know, yell at me, and we'll grab the mic up. Announcement of the Open Meetings Act. We do have proof of publication here for anybody that would like to see that. We need to. Everybody has a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting. April 3rd, had a chance to look through those. Any additions or corrections?
I'd say we approve them.
Got a motion for approval, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So approved. Mr. Herschel? All right, at this time, we will go ahead and move into our new business. The main purpose of the meeting now is for us to discuss the multiple different proposals and zoning regulations that we've had to read through, look at. I'd like everybody to express what they've liked looking at some of the other counties' proposals, additions, changes, corrections. Just a reminder, we are gonna do what we can to draw up a very comprehensive plan that we can at this time. And then we'll be able to add them into our, we'll make the approval from the commissioners, our commissioner standpoint, to send on to the county board, and then for their approval to be added on to the zoning regs. So at this time, I'll open it up to our board here to discuss potential changes on the zoning regs.
And Mr. Kaban, prior to us getting there, if I may be heard.
Yes.
So as of right now, the county has not drafted up and does not have a working copy of any solar proposal.
Correct.
Those have not been drafted up, therefore they have not been distributed. They are not in existence. So as of right now, what the board is doing and has done is reviewed comparable items from comparable counties rather than drafting our own. And that's what we have in front of us, at least as of right now. Moving forward, the county will make something that is our own, but as of right now, we have not drafted that up.
And so that everybody's aware, we have copies of zoning proposals and on the book regulations that we've looked at from multiple different counties. Examples from Gage, Cass, Fillmore, Saunders, are ones that I know I've read in depth. There's numerous other ones that have been given to us to try and get a very holistic approach. There's been people trying to talk to people from other states as well, just to get an idea of what has worked, what hasn't worked, and make sure that we are able to do what we're able to do the best here for York County. So.
And everybody can hear, is that right?
Does anybody from the zoning commission have, where do we want to start at? It's gonna be a very working type meeting. What people like, what do you want to see? Is there one of these counties that has a lot of what we would like to see, feels fits well for York County.
I think Gage County has got a complete one, so I've seen.
Has everybody had the opportunity to read through Gage County's?
Yes.
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 I don't know what is the best route to work through this, because it is a lengthy document. What are the highlights that people like? Is there any additions, changes that they would like to see to them?
Well, I liked a lot of the setbacks. And maybe some of them could be even more, but the thing is, the way they are the setbacks, if they wanna come and talk to a landowner, they can change the setbacks if that landowner isn't proven.
As a non-participating.
As a non-participating landowner, he can do that. But the problem is, that setback will probably stay with that property from here on. You sell it, it goes, that setback goes with it, it's just hooked onto your deed.
Yep.
So that, if a guy's gonna do that, you really need to think serious about what you're doing.
I do really like how they categorize different size farms, or solar conversion systems, I guess. Currently having it set up for 4 different categories. I do know, visiting with Gage County, the class 3 farm was initially not, well, there was only gonna be 3 classes. They created a 4th class for their public power provider down there, requested that one be left open in the 1 to 2 megawatts, because they were looking at putting in their own solar array as well. So that's where that smaller gap came from. So that's something we could look at if we wanted to keep and maintain that, or just go down to 3 classes. The other thing we would also, I liked in here how they laid out we took the list from NRD. I like where they have their public parks listed as well. They have additional setbacks for, state parks and NRDs as well. Churches, schools. Yep. So that's something we definitely have to update for the county.
One of my problems is glare and the temperature rise next door to the solar unit. I think that's a real problem.
I do know, reading an article, their commissioners meeting on April 5th, they had that request to be added to, I don't know where that ended up, but is to have anti-glare, there was one other category as well, added to their zoning regs. All right, so why don't we just quick, if you guys don't mind, we'll just walk through this really fast. We'll jump to class 1, so the smaller solar energy conversion systems, these are up to 100 kilowatts. By my understanding, this would be a majority of what most people would want to put a solar array in their backyard. Okay, state of Nebraska, we got our 25 kW net metering anyway, so you're kind of limited to the incentive of putting that in there. Jump to setbacks for that. Being fairly small, 75 feet, center right of way,
Page you on there.
page 4.
That center roadway,
Yes, measured from center line, well, I guess they call this front yard. They don't use terms of roadway until we get into the larger farms.
Okay.
Minimum front yard, not less, the distance of 75 feet measured from the center line in conformance with section 8.
So
7.
that is something that we would have to probably edit quite significantly because to be contiguous with the remainder of our zoning regulations, because we have two major classifications of setback. One is from center of roadway and one is from right of way. There's also some for culverts, things of that nature, but we would need to amend anything that we would adopt from another county that would use terminology like front yard. It doesn't make sense to only use that for one section of one part of the zoning regs.
Yeah, because then you get to the fourth point here, then it does mention 75 feet measured from center of road or right of way, whichever is greater.
We can just make it easy, just have 75 feet from the property line. Because everybody's properties out in the country are gonna be well over 75 feet from the property line, I would sure imagine. Minimum's 4 acres or one,
4 point
something.
something.
4, yeah. Correct.
We can go down to 2.
We can go down to 2.
There are certain reasons that people would be able to go down to 1 if necessary. If they're looking at doing a minor plot subdivision, which is not in need of septic, they could go down to 1 acre.
Okay. We can surely put a condition in there where they could do a conditional use if they want to do, correct?
Certainly.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and for reference, a good portion of our general ag zoning setbacks currently are 58 foot from the center of the roadway. So this would be only about 17 additional feet on top of what is normal. Normal being loosely used.
So it's 25 from property line.
Essentially,
Yes.
give or take a foot.
Give or take, yeah.
Yeah, because the remainder, the rear yard and the side yard both have the 75 feet right of way as well.
Correct.
So
Yeah, they just,
I don't know why on that. I was gonna go look at what section 8.7 is, but I haven't got there yet.
that's all right. I think we just make it easy, just make it a 75 foot period. You know, they don't want to have it in their, I wouldn't think they'd want it in their front yard, but I would.
And a good portion of our setbacks are front of lot, side of lot, rear of lot.
Right.
So they do have those delineated.
Same. So yeah, we hit section 4, 75 foot right away. Structures meeting industrial code. FAA regs, electrical wiring to the code. Just anybody yell at me if there's anything along the way as we jump, that sticks out I'd like to change. All ground mount electrical and control equipment must be labeled and secured to prevent unauthorized access. May not have step bolts or a ladder within 8 feet of the ground. Construction sites must be vegetated. 11, applications must include a plan during application process. All states, equipment, supporting structures, distance, solar panels can conform. Front side, rear side setbacks. 6 feet.
What about radio, telephone, and internet, television signals?
If they're impacted, or
Says minimize and mitigate any interference. Number 9 there.
I do know, I can contest the internet is a definite, the line of sight that a lot of us have to use in York County it's impacted by just roofs. So yes, I don't know how.
How do you write that?
I was gonna say, how do you determine that you are not
Exactly.
creating that? I have no idea.
Well, that's after the fact. Because you don't know if you have a problem until you get there working.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, since our internet's been so.
So that's a pretty small sentence that says they shall, the owner, SSCCS shall minimize and mitigate any interference with electromagnetic communications.
But that is something that would be applied after the fact as well, like
Yeah,
you
it's after
said.
the fact, yeah.
So if they find out, yes, this is interfering, then they could be required to take mitigating actions.
After.
There are some cases there may not be a.
Well, if that's the case, then there would be legal redress to remove the solar panels. That's my fancy lawyer way of saying it, anyways.
But shouldn't that be in here? I mean, that's pretty small words for what it says.
And it could mean a lot if you're trying to communicate in that area.
Yeah.
Was anything said when you talked to Gage County about that particular thing?
I did not bring that up in particular, no. So I do not have any information behind that.
Okay.
I think we're just, interest of time will continue. We can leave that one. I got it marked and I got notes over here. We can come back to do some research on as well. Solar panels conform to the front, side, rear lot setbacks requirements except as provided here within. Solar panel attached to an integral part of the principal building may project 2 feet into the front yard, 6 feet into the rear yard, and 2 feet into the side yard. Got all that? Solar panel which is freestanding shall be located only in the required rear or side yard, provided it does not exceed 12 feet in height and not closer than 5 feet in existing easement, as measured from the closest point of structure, including the foundation. Nor shall the solar panel be located in the required front yard. Yep. Then physical structure and connections to existing structures shall conform to the applicable state building and electrical codes. Of course, comply with all and/or state and federal regulations where it's applicable. Do we have any approved solar arrays? I'm sure we have to have some that have already been smaller in York County.
I would imagine, I've received one request for one private person permit since I've been the zoning administrator. I can only imagine that there's gotta be some somewhere in the county that I'm just not aware of.
Okay,
City's got one, about the landfill.
yeah. We would just update the date on the pre-existing solar panels.
They're exempt, Carl.
City's exempt, right? They're trying to make your taxes lower in town.
And then here, here's a lot of your, so county zoning administration may require other testing safeguards prior to approval as deemed necessary. So
Yeah.
There's our conditions.
There's your condition. walks through the application requirements, how that process would look like, the name of the project, applicant, project owners, legal description of the address for the project to be, description, including name type, nameplate, generating capacity, agreement, means of interconnecting with the electrical grid, site layout, including in the location of property lines, easements, wetlands, protected areas, solar panels, electrical grid, and all related accessory structures. This site layout shall include distances and be drawn to scale in sufficient detail to allow for a determination that the manner of installation conforms to the National Electrical Code. Having to have a stamp of a certified electrical engineer that has the disciplines of solar energy, documentation of land ownership, legal control, setback waivers if applicable, locations of wetlands and scenic area, natural areas within 1,320 feet of the proposed solar panels. I do know we're gonna see that the natural scenic areas, and there's a lot with the Homestead National Monument. That was a huge sticking point in Gage County. So there's some of that we can graft around or draft as we need. Vegetation management plan and soil stabilization and sterilization, whatever the plan is going to be for those. Supplying the county emergency management agency, local fire departments, basic energy or emergency response plans, and the map showing of all the shutoffs, disconnects, and valves. Evidence provided by engineer, architect, or equivalent that there will be no interference with any commercial and or public safety communications towers. So there's some of our communication standpoint. Proof of liability insurance, and then discontinuation and commissioning plan that states all equipment, support structures, electrical equipment, and fences that'll be removed upon the discontinuance of the system operation. That would be class 1, and I have the notes of determining the questions on the communication standpoint, and then also editing the front yard verbiage. Anything else on there for the smaller 100 kilowatts or less? All right, we'll go ahead and move into class 2 then. So these would be farm, or keep saying farm, solar energy conversion systems which have a rated capacity greater than 100 kWs up to 1 megawatt. Include substations, cables, wires, converters, or other building accessories whose main purpose is to supply electricity to on and off-site customers. May be included as an aggregate product, such as those projects that are developed and operated in coordinated fashion, but which have multiple entities separately owning one or more of the CSECS within a larger project. Associated infrastructure such as power lines, transformers, that service the facility may be owned by a separate entity, but are also part of the aggregated product. So these would be anything located on a lot parcel of at least 3 acres. Has all the special use permitted zoning districts listed there. And I would assume those are they match ours, correct? How they have
I'll
theirs?
double check real quick. What page are you on?
6.
6.
Fences, walls, berm,
They do not.
they don't.
No, we have different categories of zoning districts. We have the interstate, they don't. That's gonna be the big one. But we can, that's pretty easily modifiable. The trick is that we would need to figure out which districts to allow it in and which districts to not allow it in. The big ones would be the interstate commercial, general ag, which is by far the largest portion of our zoning districts, or there's transitional ag, commercial. Those are the ones that are coming off the top of my head. But I believe all of the ones currently proposed, at least, are in general ag. And I can't imagine anybody wanting to do a solar farm next to the interstate. But crazier things have happened.
I still gotta think, continue to think entire county, so.
Right. But the big two that we have are the interstate and highway commercial districts, which just border 81 and 80, and then general ag. Those are the two biggest ones that we have.
So then with this, the class two, these, the farms get bigger, then we'll start to, have verbiage around screening, so fences, walls, berming, vegetation, or some combination thereof to provide visual screening shall be used. Fencing, walls, or berming may be used to supplement other screening methods, but shall not account for over 50% of the screening. Existing natural features, topography, vegetation may be used to achieve visual screening if provided in accordance with the visual screening requirements provided here within. If the visual screening is for adjacent non-participating residential uses, it shall be provided as follows. If the screening is required, the screen shall cover 100% of the surface area of the vertical plane extending along the property line adjacent to the CSECS at an amount equal to or greater than the surface area of the dwelling to be visually screened, plus 75 feet in both directions, or until it reaches a public road right-of-way, which comes first, and from the ground to a height of at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground. Make sense?
I think that ought to be in all classifications of this solar district.
Into the additional classes.
Yeah.
As we get into them.
They get even more stringent.
They get even more as we get into the
Okay,
larger
all
ones.
right. Okay.
But those are not in class one, is that correct?
Correct.
No.
If the visual screening is for adjacent or non-participating public park or school uses, it shall be provided as follows. The screen shall cover at least 70% of the vertical plane extending along the entire property line adjacent to the CSECS from the ground to a height of at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground. If the screening is achievable through a fence or wall, it shall be provided along the property line and the front road as follows. Acceptable fence and wall materials for visual screening include masonry, stone, and wood, but exclude chain link fences with or without slats. Alternative fence and materials may be used for screening, must be approved by the zoning administrator. If the visual screening is achieved through berming, it shall be provided along the property line as follows. The side slopes shall not exceed 3:1 horizontal to vertical. The mounted ground surface shall be protected to prevent erosion through the use of turf lawn or other alternative ground covers. If the visual screening is achieved through vegetation, it shall be provided along the property line as follows, at a rate of at least 4 trees every 100 linear feet. Of the 4 trees, every 100 linear feet, at least 1 shall be a deciduous shade tree, and then the remaining 3 shall be evergreen or ornamental trees. The trees shall be evenly distributed within each 100 linear feet section. At least 2/3, but no more than 3/4 of the total ornamental evergreen trees along the property line shall be made up of evergreen trees. Sound good?
Yep.
Minimum yard requirements, no structure shall be placed within the high water mark of the waterways in designated district as identified by the flood insurance rate map as special flood hazard areas unless the base or footings to such structures are at least 1 foot above the high water mark. Makes sense. Setbacks, public road, the CSE.
Just went back a page. Yeah.
Oh shoot, sorry guys.
Yeah, lost.
Like I said, keep yelling at me. So we'll back to the trees. Ornamental. Each tree shall have a minimum mature height of at least 15 feet and then maintain the original standard of planting. So if one dies, you gotta keep them up. Visual screening is not required along the property line adjacent to participating properties.
So they only have a tree, he was only gonna have a tree one every 100 feet?
No,
Or every
One every
So
25
one
foot.
every, so one every 25.
Yep, 3 evergreen and a deciduous.
One every 25. That's quite a ways.
there have to be some big trees.
Shit. It'd take 15 years to, shit, it'd take 20. Thing to be over with before the goddamn trees are big enough to hide it.
We can change it.
Well,
That's right.
I think we ought to put more trees in. Maybe go 10 trees per 100. Maybe one every 10 feet, that'd at least give it a little better shot at it.
I agree.
And I don't think it says anything about are we talking just an NRD seedling, or
They have to be a minimum starting height, they say 8 foot.
Well, that's a big tree.
It had mature height.
It had a mature height of 15 feet.
15 feet, sure,
I guess
It
we don't have a
isn't
starting.
No. So if you spade it in at 4, 4 foot, just, well, you know how long it takes to put one in this tall? 25 years.
So then do you want to maintain the same,
Same
ratio?
2/3.
Well, 2/3 to 3/4, evergreen to deciduous?
I think I'd rather see all evergreen, because they don't die. Unless they're thinking there's,
Let's get a really good hailstorm.
well, that's the only time I've ever seen that. I cannot believe it killed them trees. I don't think these ornamentals grow any faster, I don't believe.
There's some of them that do, but they don't last.
Right,
yeah. It'll last very long.
right. Ornamental slash evergreen, so ornamental, is that a spruce,
Some people.
correct? I don't think a hardwood would be considered ornamental, that'd be a leaf.
Yeah.
We have to know our
Trees.
trees.
We always call them arboretums.
Evergreen trees that grow more than 2 feet per year are classified as fast growing.
Excellent.
So 8 years to get from seedling to
The 15 foot.
15 foot.
So half.
And that's at a fast growing phase.
Oh, boy, I don't know. I don't think I've seen one ever grow that fast.
I'm fine adding in more trees.
Yeah,
What's the proposal, or we'll throw in the draft?
I think we ought to put, 10 per 100. That'd be one every 10 foot. Unless they're leaving them wide for fire access. Gosh, shit, there ain't nothing to burn out there but the trees.
So add more kindling, more trees.
More trees, more kindling.
Okay.
Yeah, other than pasture.
They have, as we get further into here though, they have better,
Okay,
so the standpoint of access for fire, that's all taken care of.
right,
too, so.
right, okay.
So I'll put down draft for 10 trees for every 100 foot,
I think so.
Yeah.
all evergreens or mixture.
I don't know. Sure, I can see a tree that lives.
I like some of these shoulder belts, they're planted and about half dead, and every other year then you start back
Start
over
over.
again.
I guess in well, we don't know how long this will last. This will go on after 25 years or not.
Decommissioning, do they have to take their chain link fence out, but they have to take the trees out too? On decommissioning?
I would think we could leave that up to the property owner. Maybe he'd like to leave them. I don't know. You know,
We'll get to
we'll get to that.
We'll get to it. I don't think there's anything in there about the trees, but we'll get to it. Read through it. But we can come back to decide the tree factor.
Okay.
Line 7, all ground-mounted electrical and control equipment must be labeled and secured to prevent unauthorized access. All electrical wires associated with the CSECS, other than the wires necessary to connect the disconnect junction box and the ground wires, shall be located underground. The owner shall minimize and mitigate any interference with electromagnetic communications. So it's the same, the radio, telephone, internet. Some of these that are repeats, because I think they'll start involving more of them as we go. I'm gonna kind of skip over a little faster. Regrading, revegetation, same as the last. Each CSECS, so line 10, system application shall have a decommissioning plan outlining the means, procedure, cost, removal, all related support infrastructure. This plan must be submitted with the application and state all equipment, support structures, electrical equipment and fences will be removed upon discontinuance of the system's operation within 1 year. So there goes your fence and electrical equipment. Line 11, comply with all federal and state regulations. Line 12 is the open planning commission and board of supervisors may require other testing safeguards prior to approval deemed necessary. 13, a solar resource measurement device used for the purpose of the solar energy conversion system is permitted by a conditional use permit approved by the zoning administrator for the aggregated product and must meet setback requirements of those established for a CSECS. If the solar resource measurement device is non-functional, it shall be removed after a period of 2 years from discontinuance. Anybody an expert on a solar resource measurement device?
Google.
Solar resource. Alright, I'm gonna guess that is the substation.
That's what I would think, putting it all together,
Equipment
the
would
one
be-
line to go to the,
To
to get to the
the
transmission.
measurement device, I'm gonna assume that is how they kilowatts
Because it's able to stay
for 2 years.
2 years, so it's a year even after the
After
decommission.
the decommission. Be the last thing to go. So probably, I would assume they would leave it on the line as much as they could until they got all dead or gone. Who knows? Never seen anything, don't know. A lot of don't know about a print in front of us. Yeah.
When you find the yellow, we'll keep rolling.
Well, there's one on Amazon for $21.
I suppose we'll burn her up right away.
I'm guessing they have something a little more industrial than that.
Each CSECS must have a 911 address. The CSECS shall be designated and placed in such a manner to minimize adverse visual and noise impacts on adjacent areas. Such things as screening, fencing, vegetation, trees, shrubs, pollinator plantings can be used. However, such design should be included in the application documents. In no case shall a CSECS be located with any required setback or in any front yard area except that a non-participating landowner can waive a setback requirement by a written agreement submitted at the time of the application. Such agreement must be filed with the Register of Deeds, and proof of that filing shall be provided to the county planning and zoning administrator prior to approval of the permit. So there's the opportunity for non-participating to
Leave it.
negotiate.
Encroach, yeah.
Structures for the CSECS project must provide a structural analysis stamped by a licensed engineer registered in the state of Nebraska. Colors and surface treatment of the CSECS and supporting structures shall, to the greatest extent possible, minimize disruption of the natural characteristics of the site. reading through this, this next line, I never thought of this, but it's a great idea. No logos or advertisements are allowed on these structures. The project shall be marked with visible identification number applicable to the project with current contact numbers. Reasonable measures shall be taken to mitigate specific adverse visual impacts such as potential glint or reflections which affect residents within, immediate, or adjacent to the project area. The applicant shall minimize or mitigate any interference with electromagnetic communications such as radio, telephone, television signals caused by any solar energy facility. So that is completion of class 2s.
As far as I can tell, it's gonna be a device that looks about like that.
No, that's a total station. That's not it.
Would it be?
Well, there you go. Yeah, total station, by God.
Would it?
That's for,
They're using different terminology here than Page County was using. Pyranometer seems to be pretty.
pyranometer, that's,
Reading solar capability.
that would be energy, I think. Pyro is really,
Measures high accuracy shortwave radiation
Your head is
that's, yeah.
used for measuring solar radiation flux density and broadband solar irradiance.
So anything in the atmosphere, close to, yes,
Aside from that, I am not a solar expert.
you will be.
Thanks for that.
All right. Before we proceed to class 3s,
Did it, I guess, the class 2s, it never really said a size,
one of the
but as far as physical size.
3 acres or more.
Or more, so,
Because then as we go into, but
As many cells as they needed, provided that the generation of said cells is between 100 kilowatts and 1 megawatt.
total generation.
total, yeah.
Right.
So if there's a break, the 911 thing, I'm gonna have to have it every mile. The 911 address is gonna have to be,
So the way that we do 911 addresses, it would make better sense to do it by parcel number than it would necessarily be to do every mile. Because each parcel then will have its own individual address.
Yes.
Because last thing you want is for somebody to be having a heat stroke in the middle of a mile and then say, well, here's your 1 mile section, please come find me.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. That's great. Good idea.
And that's how we already do it, and so I don't think there's anything special we need to put in.
Aren't they by driveways or?
So yes, by approach permits,
By approach permits, yeah.
but
But there might not be an approach at each.
this would be a special, different type
so
of thing.
Each quarter, each 80, or,
Whatever, if this one might be a 40, this one might be an 80, this one might be a full quarter.
right,
So on and so forth. Each one would receive its own 911 address based on how one might get to there, so that if they do have to dial 911, we know that we need to go in on road H or what have you.
whatever, 6 and H or whatever.
Right.
For access, okay, all right.
But I would say for that, the class 2s, didn't see they have one clarifier here, but it would be basically 3 acres up to 10 acres.
Up to 10, okay. All
Because
right.
their next one starts at 10
10 acres and
at
above.
least is 10 acres.
Okay.
And the last one's 10 to 20.
Okay,
So that would be,
I disagree.
really,
Yes.
okay.
If it's 3 and above, in theory, you could have somebody do 9/10 of a megawatt and be on 50 acres. It wouldn't force them to go into the next one. The classification's gonna be by megawatt
Okay.
or
So
wattage,
it is
rather.
just as at least X.
But business, I guess in my mind, would say the smaller area that we can do, the less maintenance, the less items to go bad. So you're gonna keep that as small as you possibly can, as opposed to spreading it out through 150 really inefficient machines,
Yeah.
better do it with 3 efficient ones.
Makes sense.
So that may be something that you might wanna consider as far as, if you did wanna say up to 3, 3 to 10, 10 to 25, and 25 and above, or if you did wanna keep it by wattage, or how you wanted to do that, that's something to think about.
Well, and I'm still up in the air, I don't know, and we can read through this, as if we need to keep this middle class here, this 1 megawatt to 2 megawatt, or just make it 1 megawatt and larger into one class.
Well, I think.
And like I said, the only reason they did this, by my understanding, was their local public power requested it.
Well, I think we already have this in York County out of the land. Is that, I'm gonna ask, I think that's what that is at the cap.
Is it perennial?
No, it's the cities, well, cities and counties.
That'd be all theirs.
The landfill?
Yeah, how big is that one? You
I
know?
don't know off the top of my head, but we could
Okay.
find that out.
Now, that would be inside the city's
City
zoning.
limits, but
True.
I think that's like on, right, I believe it's 20 acres, I believe,
Right.
is what they
So-
put it on.
But then it wouldn't affect our regulations at all, they regulate their own.
I get it,
Okay.
but,
But if perennial wanted to put something up.
correct.
Okay. I guess it's in here already, I just didn't know. if
I'd
it's
say we leave, I'd say we leave
Okay.
it. That way we don't have, if somebody wants it, then we don't have to come back and,
Add it later.
add it later. Or we can put it to the conditional use.
So we'll go ahead and start class 3, commercial solar energy conversion systems, a CSECS, which has a rated capacity greater than 1 megawatt to 2 megawatts under a common or aggregated ownership that includes substations, cables, wires, converters, or other building accessories, whose main purpose is to supply electricity to off-site customers. CSECS may be included in an aggregate product, such as those projects that are developed and operated in coordinated fashion, but which have multiple entities separately owning one or more of the CSECS within a larger project. Associated infrastructure such as power lines, transformers that service the facility may be owned by a separate entity, but are also part of the aggregated project. General site and design standards located on a lot or parcel of at least 10 acres. They do have one clarifier there.
So it is intended to be 10, not 20.
Yes, because, what I shouldn't assume, but, because if you go to the class 4, there they have it listed as 2020.
Yep.
Permitted by special use permit, we would edit in our zoning districts. As we did with the class 2s. Minimum yard requirements, no structure shall be placed within the high water mark of waterways and designated district, so that is all the same as the last. Setbacks from public road, CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback distance from any public road of at least 75 feet measured from the center of road or highway, right-of-way, whichever is greater. Participating properties, there will be no setback as required between an adjacent resident of the property participating in the same aggregated project. Non-participating properties, CSECS shall maintain a minimum of 150 feet from a property line. Non-participating existing dwellings, CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback
Quarter mile.
of 1,320 feet or a quarter mile from property line. Same, churches or public schools and public recreation areas shall maintain a minimum setback of a half mile or 2,640 feet from the property line. From approved platted subdivisions, CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback of a half mile as well at 2,640 feet from the property line. For towns, villages that do not have applicable zoning regulations, a CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback of 2,640 feet or half mile as well. Trying to think, I mean, for York County towns, villages that don't have applicable zoning, I mean,
Maybe Lushton.
that's there, I don't,
Thayer has their own, Bradshaw has their own, Benedict has their own, McCool has their own, York has its own, Waco has its own, Henderson has its own. The only ones I could think of would either be Lushton or Gresham's got its own, Arborville. But really, at this point, Arborville is just the church.
so they
So,
would still fall into the church at the half mile.
right, so then the only thing that I would be able to think of would be Lushton. And I don't believe Lushton has its own. I'm gonna double check that though.
Waiver of setback requirements may be waived by agreement between adjoining landowners, provided that A, said agreement for waiver is made in writing, B, said agreement is presented to the zoning administrator upon application for zoning permit, and C, said agreement shall be recorded in the county register of deeds office, indexed to the affected properties. Number 4, structures shall meet applicable industry structural codes, neutral in color, same as the other ones. Number 5, meet all FAA requirements, same as the others. 6, we'll read through this one in case there's something different.
Oh, Lushton's got their own?
Okay.
So we don't have any incorporated villages that would be included in that section.
Okay, so we'll discuss if that verbiage needs to be maintained or not. Fences, walls, berming, vegetation, or other combination thereof to provide visual screening shall be used. Fencing, walls, berming supplement other screening methods, but shall not account for over 50% of the screening. Existing natural features, topography, vegetation may be used to achieve visual screening if provided in accordance with the visual screening requirements provided here within. That is the exact same as what we had in the class 2s. 75 feet each direction until it reaches public road right away, or whichever comes first. The ground height of at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground. Screening shall cover at least 70% of the vertical plane extending along property lines from the ground to a height of at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground. Visual screening is achieved where the fence wall shall be provided along property line, front roads. Same as it was in the previous D, same as it was in the previous E. There we could increase the trees once again to 10 per 100. Same, mature height 15 feet, and then maintaining the original standard of planting.
And was that all evergreen or with deciduous in there?
We still haven't made that decision.
Okay.
What's that? Nobody, well, I don't have to, that's a good
Who
question.
maintains them?
Or polices them, you know.
I don't know who would police them, but it's in here that they would maintain to the original standard.
You'll have the zoning.
Yep. Me or whoever the zoning person is at that point would be the police
I
for
would
that.
imagine, somebody will inform you if there's a bad tree.
I can only imagine. And I'll be out there with a yardstick. Yep. Gonna need a hell of a ladder.
Line,
Everything reads the same as the.
that's what I was gonna say, line 7's the same, line 8 is the same, 9's the same, 10 is the same.
Really, the only difference is it's a half mile versus a quarter
Yeah.
mile.
On the setbacks, yeah, same 911 addresses. All right, so that will take us to the end of class threes. So go to the top of page 14. Class fours, solar, commercial solar energy conversion systems, a CSECS, which has a rated capacity of greater than 2 megawatts under a common or aggregated ownership that includes substations, cables, wires, converters, and other building accessories whose main purpose is to supply electricity to off-site customers. CSECS may be included as an aggregated project, such as those projects that are developed and operated in a coordinated fashion, but which have multiple entities separately owning one or more of the CSECS within a larger project. Associated infrastructure such as power lines and transformers that service a facility may be owned by a separate entity, but are also part of the aggregated project. So general site and design standards, located on lot or parcel of at least 20 acres.
And I see that's where it would be a typo on the class threes.
Correct, yep. Then permitted special uses, then zoning districts updated there.
Now, that is one thing, while I'm thinking about it, and I probably should have mentioned this a while back, do we want to permit it in all areas or only in general ag? It appears like they have 4 different ag zones. We only have general ag and transitional ag commercial, which is only in 2 sections. So that would be the span of Henderson to the interstate, and I believe McCool to York, within a certain area around the highways there.
Of 81.
Yeah, 81 and then the Henderson's first.
And nothing goes up, Wacos.
Correct. So then 80% of the county-ish is going to be general ag. And it looks like they kept it to agriculture only, because I don't see anything commercial for anywhere. We don't have really many commercial districts except for abutting the interstate and then our cities. So if we wanted to just keep it general ag, we can do that, or if you wanted to put in the transitional or the interstate or whatever, we could do that, but up to you.
I'd say we leave it to general ag. I agree.
And again, that is 80% of the county. Or at least of the county's zoning jurisdiction, I should say.
Okay, we'll just leave it as general ag then for right now. Minimum yard requirements, same on the flood hazard areas. Setbacks from public road, CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback distance, same 75 feet measured from the center of the road or right of way, or whichever is greater. For participating properties, no setback required between an adjacent residence of the property participating in the same aggregated project. From non-participating property, CSECS shall maintain a minimum of 660 feet from a property line. And then from a non-participating existing dwelling, a CSECS shall maintain a minimum setback of a half mile or 2,640 feet from the property line. Then move to the churches and recreation areas. The setback moves up to 3/4 of a mile, 3,960 feet. And then platted subdivisions are at a half mile as well, at 2,600 feet. Towns, villages, which we determined none exist that don't have their own zoning, would be a half mile. The exact same verbiage for the waiver of setback requirements that are in the other classifications. Same on industry codes, FAA. Same on screening. We can go ahead and already jump to page 16, continuing on screening. Increase the trees to 10 per 100. Number 7 is the exact same as what we've had already. Number 8 is the exact same already. 9 is the same, 10 is the same, 11 is the same, 12 is the same. 13, resource management device, same. 14, 911 addresses, same. 15 is the same. 16 is the same. 17 is the same. 18 is the same. 19 is the same, and so is 20. So that would be all of your setbacks, screening, berming, such, for the 4 different classifications.
One thing we really didn't talk about, it's been brought up about heat and so on. How do we want to protect our livestock producers? Nobody's really knows nothing about this dissipation thing. Do we give them a little more setback
On the livestock side?
on the livestock side? I'm sure Chad won't put any more heat by his chickens. You got fans, so it'll be all right. So that was one thing that was brought up as a concern, especially the cattle.
Yep.
Cattle people, they were very concerned. Do we give them? I wish there was some data. I could not find it. The Real sent us some stuff, and I shared with you guys. You know, I could not find nothing on the panel side where it talked about the dissipation. You know, the gal I talked to said the panels have changed since that was written, but she would not give me what that number was. But
I am not an expert on that.
yeah.
There was some information that was provided by EDF through their attorneys. Just in the summary, they do cite some things as far as studies go, but in the summary, solar farms have little to no impact on ambient air temperatures outside of the project site. While there is no evidence of adverse effects to animals or crop yields, reasonable setbacks and vegetation requirements may reassure concerned citizens. So that's something I think, obviously don't take word for it, everything with a grain of salt, trust and verify and all. So, but
What was that thing you were reading earlier?
This setbacks in our own zone has.
Well, I mean, we do just from the livestock standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, we have setbacks depending on the size. I mean,
The size
You
of-
could look at it the same thing.
Right. Right.
Size of the livestock. There's some of them that are up to a mile and, what is it, mile and a half? A minimum. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just as an example, vice versa, going the other way. Depending on the number of animal units, yeah, anywhere up to a mile and 3, just short of a mile and a half to a minimum of quarter mile.
For a dwelling,
Livestock facilities.
for livestock facilities.
Yeah, to a dwelling.
I think we'd want to leave it at least that much.
So we could make them do the same thing.
Vice versa, yeah.
Yeah. Depending on the size. of the
Depends on the size.
So,
Hmm?
the size of the matter. I guess depends on how bad you got chucked in there. Yeah, I don't know, that's good. Obviously, a larger feedlot is gonna produce more heat because you just got more animals in there. But, I don't know.
I would say at this time, we leave, because what, I got the setbacks. I mean, we're currently at, if they're not non-participating already at a half mile.
No, it's just dwellings.
That's dwelling.
Or we could add verbiage in there of,
Yeah, non-participating properties is only 660 feet.
we could define, I mean, instead of just
Right.
dwelling, define
Define.
confined animal feeding unit or something to that degree.
Right.
Well, and we've already got those defined otherwise in our zoning regs, and so we could cross-site as long as we give whoever is actually drafting the document the basic idea. It might make a better use of time to say, hey, coordinate that, than it would be for us to try and do that right now.
Page so-and-so in the zoning, yeah.
Paragraph XYZ.
Right, right.
And it doesn't, just for information, it doesn't look like Cass does anything with livestock either.
Cassis is very conditional use.
Right. And it does bear in mind that all of these permits are going to be, by their very nature, conditional use. And so somebody applying within a quarter mile of a long-established family livestock unit might have additional conditions than somebody in the middle of nowhere in a valley. So that can also be adjusted. Now that would be up to this board plus the county commissioners on a case-by-case basis.
I do think it's probably good to have some sort of setbacks to include whether livestock facilities, something similar to dwellings.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely.
The only thing that I would question on that, but I guess the non-participating dwellings in the overall the CSECS, they could still have a class 1 solar array on their yard, but still not participate in this, but it'd be the same on the livestock side. They could have a class 1 solar array on their facility, but yet still have their setbacks. Just don't want to get them in a pickle where they couldn't do that if they wanted to.
So long as the setbacks are by classification
That's what
to
we should-
apply more towards commercial rather than towards individual, I wouldn't see an issue with it. So then your class 1s wouldn't stop anything from me having 150 cattle plus my own solar on the same lot, where I couldn't necessarily do the same thing with a commercial solar.
I just want to make sure we don't get it in a pickle there somehow.
Right. As long as we make sure to classify the setbacks for those classes, rather than including all 4 classes, I don't see an issue there.
Application requirements for, so this would be class 2s, class 3s, and class 4s. The application process is included with the class 1s on the original, within its setbacks. The applicant for the special use permit for construction of the CSECS shall file an application with the county zoning administrator. The application shall include the names of the project applicants, the name of the project owners, the legal description, the address of the project. The application shall also include the following documents: a survey map illustrating the following: property lines, dimensions, acreage encompassed, and contours with the appropriate intervals for site evaluation. Location, elevation of all components of the proposed CSECS, location and dimensions of all existing structures and uses on property within 1 mile of the CSECS, location of any overhead utility lines on the property, location of all known communications towers within 2 miles of the proposed CSECS, access roads, adjacent ownership, land uses, existing residences, schools, churches, hospitals, public libraries, federal, state, county, or local parks, organized historical or heritage sites, identified wildlife preserves or habitat areas to a distance of 1 mile. Provide a copy of the easement deed or similar recorded documents from the reading through their county register of deeds, For the participating properties, provide a map illustrating all transmission lines connecting to the substation. Compliance with FAA regulations, including any documents required by the FAA, which shall include Form 7460 certifying approval for each proposed location if applicable. Provide minute from the meetings. This is the York Airport Authority to discuss and review the proposed CSECS site plan. Result, I suppose, any other active runways? We would have Knox.
That's the only one.
That'd be private though.
Yeah. So the only public one.
I think it's decommissioned too, but
Knox?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Okay.
And that Form 7460, by the way, is a notice of proposed construction or alteration that you would file with the FAA.
That'd take years to get that back.
This 7 here, this 5280, is that above and beyond everything else we've talked about? So 1 mile from my house, is that how I'm reading this?
No, they're just saying that you have to tell everything that's within a mile where you want to.
Oh, okay.
On the permit, these are all the people who might have.
Who gets notified?
Correct.
Okay, zoning notification.
Yep.
Results of consultation with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, National Weather Service, or any other relevant weather monitoring in the CSECS project areas when applicable. Results of consultation regarding potential interference with existing communication facilities. So here's where your communications all come into in the project area. Applicant shall identify potential effects in terms of constraints or benefits of the solar energy facility may place on current or future use of the land within the project site and the surrounding area. The extent of any limitations due to public health and safety risks shall be specifically addressed, and the effects on the following activities shall also be addressed. 1, existing or proposed tourist or recreation activities. 2, residential activities. 3, industrial activities. 4, agricultural activities. 5, commercial activities. Application shall meet all requirements of the NDE, the NRCS, and NRD districts in the project area. Soil erosion, sediment control, and stormwater runoff plans shall address what types of erosion control measures will be used during each phase of the project. It shall identify plans for grading, construction of drainage access roads, design features to control dust, design features to maintain downstream water quality, revegetation to ensure slope stability, restoring the site after temporary project activities, disposal or storage of excavated materials, protecting exposed soil, stabilizing restored material and removal of silt fences or barriers when the area is stabilized, maintenance of erosion controls throughout the life of the project, must present an applicable weed or vegetation plan at the time of permit. Applicant shall provide information regarding flora or fauna of the proposed project, use the area, including official listed threatened and endangered species, habitat conditions, an avian study based off the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That avian study one I know has come visiting with some folks that have some larger solar arrays in waterfowl migration areas. They accidentally see large solar arrays as water. K, a pre-construction noise and glare study shall be conducted and shall include all property within 1 mile of the CSECS. Projections of any glare on a structure shall include the extent and duration of the glare on the existing structure. The protocol, methodology, and modeling shall be included in the study. The complete results and full study report shall be submitted to the York County Planning Commission for review at the time of the application. Standard drawings of the structural components of the CSECS. Certifications by a registered licensed engineer in the state of Nebraska that shows there is substantial need for proposed use of the CSECS greater than 100 kW. All applicable local, state, federal building, structural, and electrical codes have been followed. The site is feasible for a CSECS and can be successfully operated in the climate conditions found in York County. The design and safety of the proposed CS-ECS can withstand weather-related events, i.e. I would assume hail and tornadoes. This is some of the other verbiage that I really liked. I think for the county it's protection as well. Escrow account shall be set up when the applicant applies for a special use permit for a CS-ECS. The monetary amount filed by the applicant would be York County shall be an amount estimated by York County Board of Supervisors to cover all reasonable costs and expenses associated with the special zoning review and approval process, which can include but are not limited to any reports or studies which the County Zoning Commission and/or Board of Supervisors anticipates and may have done related to zoning review process for this application. Such escrow amount shall include established fees at any point during the zoning review process. The County Zoning Commission and/or County Board of Supervisors shall require that the applicant place additional monies into the escrow in the event funds prove insufficient. If the escrow amount needs replenished and the applicant refuses to do so within 14 days after receiving notice, the zoning review and final process shall cease until the applicant makes a required escrow deposit. Any escrow amounts which are more than actual cost shall be returned to the applicant within 90 days of the permitting process completion. An itemized billing of all expenses shall be provided to the applicant. The Planning and Zoning Commission and/or Board of Supervisors may hire qualified professionals for each and any of the technical fields associated with the special use permit, such as, but not limited to, electrical, acoustics, environmental, economics, wildlife health, and land use. Applicant shall be required to fund an escrow account for investigation of complaints for, but not limited to, glare, stray voltage, there's a double in there, stray voltage, noise, and signal interference, with the amounts of funds to be set at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors. When the escrow account balance is below $5,000, the county shall notify the applicant shall replenish within 45 days of notification.
The attorney in me wants to say for N that we want to put a specific amount in there as a minimum.
I was wondering, because that one, zero had as amount. But
Right. Well, the problem is that we're relying on the Board of Supervisors or the Board of Commissioners to be experts in what would or would not be necessary as far as the study goes. My personal thought would be, when we look at applications, the Board of Commissioners says for this particular application, it's $10,000, but for this one, it's $50,000, but for this one, it's $20,000, and somebody gets upset at the amount that they're required to put down. I don't think you necessarily want to put a lid on it, but probably a minimum, something like a 20 or 25 or something like that, or more, maybe less, I don't know. Experts are expensive. I can't imagine that you're going to necessarily get an acoustical study or an environmental study
less than 25.
for less than, yeah, it's just not gonna happen. So if they deem it necessary, that would be my suggestion, would be to add in a minimum. What that minimum should be, I would leave up to more learned men than me.
I agree.
So.
All right, yeah, we'll have to have a minimum, come up with whatever recommendation from somebody that might know what one of them studies may cost, whatever.
And that's strictly for a class 4, correct? Just
2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4?
Yeah.
It essentially provides coverage so that the county isn't expending money of the taxpayers' dollars to say yes or no to a commercial enterprise.
Correct.
So logic would say you'd spend less on a 2 than you would on a 4. But at the same time, depending on the particular use, the location of the facilities, surrounding areas, surrounding land uses and things like that, a class 2 may require 4 or 5 different experts, whereas a class 4 might require only 2.
So we're going to do our own study versus
Correct.
XYZ handing us theirs.
Correct. And so this would be funding for that.
For that,
Yeah.
yes.
And so again, I have no idea what an acoustic study would cost or a wildlife study, assuming that you can't get it from a public entity, you have to go private. I don't have a clue. $10,000 may be a drop in the bucket, or it may be 3 times as much as you need. I haven't got a clue.
So is that gotta be different for each class?
Each class.
I'd say we just, well, no, it wouldn't have to be, because they're gonna get it back if they don't use it.
Correct.
Yep.
You know, heck, if they will.
Well, and the commissioners may be satisfied with whatever information is provided, not use any of it, they get it all back.
Right, right.
But having more, I'm an attorney, I used to work on retainer fees. More in the bank is much better. At least then you can give it back at the end, rather than begging for $1.
And I would assume even for what, if you go to a class 2 for what it's gonna cost to build anything over 100 kilowatts to a megawatt,
It's just,
25,000.
that's just the cost of the business. It's just incidental to the permit.
So again, it's worth maybe talking to people and then amending that, just making a note, hey, we need to put this in there. Because again, 25,000 may be right on the money, or it may be a quarter of what you need, I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
You know, well, you know, on the first phone call. We're a little short, boys. Yeah.
Well, and there is the, that O that says that they can ask for more money.
Additional, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so if they figure out that they're hip deep and 50,000 in and the escrow's gone, they can always say, give us 50,000 more.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the same as in there, they got 14 days to replenish.
You never know when they start glare and heat.
Right.
I mean, who's gonna be the expert?
You wanna make sure to set the commissioners up for success, especially from a liability standpoint. You don't wanna look like you're playing favorites. And so again, to charge these people 5,000, but these people 50,000 with little justification in between, you wanna at least put some insulation in.
Maybe we put a percentage of the job. You know, a 4 is gonna be 50 million. We do percentage, you know, bang, 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 all the way down. But the study's gonna cost the same whether it's a little job or a big job.
Right. So just something to think about. We've got time.
Construction operation, all public roads used for the purpose of transporting CSECS substation materials, cement, or equipment for construction, operation, or maintenance of the CSECS shall be identified and applicable weight and size permits from the impacted road authorities shall be obtained prior to construction. A pre-construction survey must be conducted with the appropriate jurisdictions to determine existing road conditions. Those included are applicants, landowners, township representatives, highway superintendents, and/or zoning administrators. The survey shall include photographs and written agreement to document the conditions of the public roads and facilities. All expenses of the survey shall be the applicant's responsibility. Prior to the commencement of construction, the applicant shall enter into an agreement with the County Highway Department regarding use of county roads during construction. The agreement shall include traffic routes, time of year use, staging areas, and any other physical sites related to the CSECS. All roads shall be constructed and maintained to allow access at all times by any emergency service vehicles. The CSECS owner shall be responsible for immediate repair or damage to public roads and drainage systems stemming from construction, operation, or maintenance of the CSECS. Any violation of the agreement will incur an assessment against the applicant for damages as determined by the applicant and the Board of Supervisors. Solid and hazardous waste, including but not limited to crates, packaging materials, damaged or worn parts, as well as used oils, lubricants, shall be removed from the site promptly and disposed of in accordance with all applicable local, state, and federal regulations. Safety measures: each CSECS shall be equipped with both manual and automatic controls to limit the power so it does not exceed the designed limits. CSECS shall include no sign or advertising of any kind except for one sign not to exceed 2 square feet posted near the entrance of the facility. electrical equipment and entrances, the sign shall contain the following information: warning, high voltage, manufacturer's name, operator's name, emergency phone number, and emergency shutdown procedures. Each CSECS shall be properly grounded to safely sustain natural lightning strikes in conformance with the Natural Electrical Code. Any CSECS facility shall be equipped with anti-climbing devices if applicable. Tower climbing apparatus shall not be located within 15 feet of the ground, and the site shall be enclosed with a lock protective fence at least 8 feet high or around the site. The ESECS operator shall maintain a current insurance policy which will cover liability, installation, operation, and any possible damage or injury that might result from the failure of any part or parts of the generation and transmission facility. The amount of said policy shall be established as a condition of approval. The CSECS shall be warranted against any system failures reasonably expected in severe weather operation. An emergency operation plan must be placed on file and kept current with the zoning administrator and county management and fire rescue departments within the project jurisdiction. The plan shall include an all hazards planning approach based on an emergency incident or disaster of any magnitude or geographic size that may cause disruptions to the function of the CSECS and include contacts for notification. Upon completion of the CSECS project, the applicant shall meet with local fire and rescue jurisdiction to review the emergency operation plans. Decontinuation and decommissioning. A cash escrow account is required before the permit is approved to guarantee removal and restoration upon discontinuation, decommissioning, or abandonment of the facility. The amount of the escrow shall include the current gross cost of decommissioning and restoration, and the permit holder shall be responsible for the holding setup fee. It shall be funded at a minimum of 10% increments annually until fully funded to satisfy the current projected decommissioning and restoration costs. The amount required may change when the project costs are reviewed and updated every 5 years. After being fully funded by year 10, the applicant shall continue to fund the escrow at 3% of its value for the life of the project, with repeated 5-year cost reviews and updates. Any escrow amounts which are more than actual costs shall be returned to the applicant within 90 days after the facilities have been fully decommissioned. Upon transfer of any CSECS permit, the permit holder shall submit proof that the escrow has been reassigned. The transfer of the CSECS permit must be filed with the Register of Deeds, and evidence of that filing shall be presented to the County Planning and Zoning Administrator and the Board of Supervisors. A CSECS shall be considered a discontinued use after 1 year without energy production, unless a plan is developed and submitted to the County Zoning Administrator outlining the steps and schedule for returning CSECS to service. All CSECS and accessory facilities shall be removed 4 feet below ground level within 90 days of the discontinuation use. This period may be extended by the zoning administrator following a written request by an agent of the owner of the CSECS. Each CSECS shall have a decommissioning and restoration plan detailing the projected means and cost of removing the CSECS at the end of the serviceable life or upon becoming a discontinued use and completion of property restoration. The cost estimates shall be prepared by an independent, competent party approved by the County Board of Supervisors, such as professional engineer, a contractor capable of decommissioning, or a person with suitable expertise or experience with decommissioning and restoration. The decommissioning and restoration plan and projected costs shall be reviewed and updated every 5 years.
By the count, by the commissioners, or
Whoever they do,
It's their plan, so it's them to be
Up to them to do it.
reviewed and updated. Yep.
wonder if they don't update it. You gotta put some bite.
Well, they're required to provide it to other entities.
yeah, there you can have person with suitable experience, expertise by the County Board of Supervisors.
Right.
Are we, I know discussions on decommissioning. 10%, so 10 years fully funded.
Fully funded at 10 years, well,
It's done before 10
well, maybe make it quicker.
years. Yeah. 10 years.
Well, especially if they're updating project costs after
Every
5 years,
Yeah,
fund it in 5.
funded in 5, but once again, it's just part of doing business here.
20% annually.
Yep.
3% of its value. I wish it was only 3% today.
Yes. So in default, then the county has to go out there and take care of this? Is that how this is supposed to? We're gonna clean up for the landowners?
And we're gonna use your money to do it.
Correct.
CSEX, yeah,
Correct.
that's the idea. In the event that a company were to go belly up and not have any monies left over to do that, then yes.
So that was 1 year from no energy, correct?
That they would have to be decommissioned.
That seems
The
like a
start
long
of,
time.
start of decommissioning, wasn't it? That was kind of,
1 year without energy.
And 1 year, yeah, 1 year without energy production, but they would then have 90 days.
to start.
90 days. Had to be removed in 90 days.
Oh shit, that, no,
No way.
can't do it.
Shall be removed
But it
after
could be
90
extended by the
days,
zoning administrator.
which puts an awful lot of power unchecked in the zoning administrator.
Right.
Now, I like power, but it may be a better use to maybe make that the Board of Commissioners or the Planning Commission or probably Board of Commissioners.
I don't know if we wanna wait 1 full year. If it's not producing any energy, why wait a year?
I agree with that.
90 days would probably be,
Get the damn thing out of here,
yeah.
you know? 180 for a they can renew it. And move it. Oh, remove it, 180, that'd be 6 months. That's more probably mine.
So call it a discontinued use after,
I would say 1 quarter, 90 days. They'll have their ducks in a row by whoever's doing this, they'll know what they're gonna do in 90 days after they shut it down. They know what they're gonna do it. 90 days before they shut it down.
Exactly.
So you wanna make that 1 year, 90 days?
Yeah.
anybody know why they chose 4 feet below ground level
For,
Removal.
for removal?
yeah.
Is that how deep their footings are?
You're gonna have footings that deep.
Well, yeah, everybody kind of, 4 foot's kind of the benchmark. 4 foot is, is buried, I think it's 48 for primary and 30 for secondary, as far as underground wire goes. So that it would catch all the underground wire at 48.
Fair enough.
It should, anything below that, if I deem it doesn't matter, but very much 5, the only thing that puts it 5 foot is water. Usually that's been a 4, but,
Well, and 4 foot down is gonna get you down below cultivation level.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, see, the pipeline's only 32 inches.
They don't
Well-
make tractors big enough to pull anything that
I was gonna say, we don't have to worry about somebody disking and pulling up
Right,
20-year-old,
right.
yeah, decommissioned wiring.
And we could 48 it at bottom of product and not at top. You know, if they got a big trunk line that's 24 inch, we want to go down to the bottom, not at the top.
Right.
Alright, so I've got them edits on there. Noise. No CSECS shall exceed 55 decibel, 10-minute length at the nearest structure occupied by a participant in the event of periods of severe weather as defined by the United States Weather Service. A CSECS may exceed 55 decibel units. A participating landowner may waive a noise limitation by written agreement, which shall be submitted at the time of application. No CSECS shall
I think that's a typo. I think that's supposed to be non-participating landowner. Because if I'm a participating landowner, of course I want to waive it.
No CSECS shall exceed 40 decibels during daytime and 37 decibels at night. Night hours are 10 PM to 7 AM at the nearest residence of a non-participating property. 3 decibel maximum 10-minute length allowed above ambient noise level. In the event of periods of severe weather as defined by the United States Weather Service, a CSECS may exceed 55 decibel. A non-participating landowner can waive a noise requirement by written agreement. A written waiver shall be submitted at the time of application. Such an agreement must be filed with the Registry of Deeds, and proof of that filing shall be provided to Gage County Planning and Zoning Administrator prior to the approval of the permit. The County Planning and Zoning Administrator and the Board of Supervisors shall require post-construction noise level measurements at the expense of the holder of the special permits within 1 year of completion. The testing shall be completed by a licensed independent acoustical engineer, and the results shall be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors. The results will be public documents subject to Nebraska's public record laws. All noise complaints regarding the operation of the CSECS shall be referred in writing to the County Planning and Zoning Administrator and the Board of Supervisors. The Board of Supervisors shall determine whether a violation has occurred.
Just the wind blowing through the back panels.
Well, I don't know if the motors also.
Well, yeah, they've got, I don't know what they have actuators. And or wind noise.
It's
Whistling.
55 decibels would be a normal conversation, an electric kettle, a residential street, a radio playing music in the background, an electric fan, an office reception area, a moderately quiet home, or an electric toothbrush. So just for reference, that's what it would need to be at the closest residence. And that's at the 55 decibel level, not the 40 or 37 decibel level.
Which our setback was, well, this is under tall. 13, 26.
for the non-participating.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a long ways.
Half mile.
Half mile.
It's the 5 decibel where you're going. Is there anything out of any of the other county's regs or proposals that anybody has read that they would like to see added or changed that this plan may not?
I could have a chance to read this.
I know there's some of them that talk about, and I can't remember the exact verbiage, being sure to line item not having towers. So the, you see them more in the desert, the mirror towers. So they have the panels and stuff all coming together.
Well, we got a height, the height is what, no more than 15
So that you
feet,
would-
so that you wouldn't, wouldn't matter.
There was discussion at a previous, I think at the public comment hearing regarding having a minimum height for animals to graze underneath.
That they needed that.
Well, that somebody recommended it. I think comparing sheep and cattle. Now, there's also other discussion about maybe it being too hot for cattle. But that was at least brought up at the last meeting.
I think that's up to, I don't think we care, as long as they stay under 15 feet, they want to use it for a back rub, I'll just knock your socks off.
Fair enough.
Hell, they can,
We'll have to
This
decommission
one,
it then.
hell, Roger,
This
they
one
can,
here
hell, they
does-
can put oil on there, they can use it for oilers then too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there was never a screening maintenance listed.
An actual definition.
Yeah, if we get a hold of
It's
it.
number 7 on that page 221.
220.
This is in the.
That's of the
Cass
Cass
County.
County.
Yep.
Cass County. But the CSCS owner shall maintain screening to establish healthy vegetative material and remedy damage or dead plantings as soon as seasonally and commercial reasonable.
Jackson here just had maintained your original plantings.
Yeah.
Here it gives you a little more
She
definition.
might say a little more about that.
When they talk about screening, is that chain link fence? Is that just,
No, you can't use chain link fences.
so they gotta use a plastic?
Berm,
A berm or concrete or wood.
you actually can't use chain link
You
even
can't
with
use chain, not even with
the slats.
slats in it.
So we're gonna think we're out there probably gonna use berming probably for their privacy, you think?
I would think that would be the best cost effective and last the longest.
Yes. Got all the dirt right there.
Take it, put it back.
They put that, yeah.
But the berm was 8 foot.
Minimum 8 foot.
Minimum of 8 foot or more. So they don't, how do you determine the height? You know, so do we want to, you got a 2-story house. That's who knows. I guess on ground. Well,
I,
And from the ground to a height of at least 8 feet above the adjacent ground. So it's 8 feet plus, but if
Plus.
you've got a 2-story house,
so who decides eyesore, for lack of better words?
if we were to utilize these regulations, it would be the owner of the CSCCS to determine how high they want to go, but 8 feet would be the minimum.
Well-
And anytime you're establishing that, somebody's gonna do the minimum.
8 feet 1 inch. If I'm building, it's 8 feet 1 inch. I don't care if it's 33-story building or a 3-inch building. It's got to be 8 feet 1 inch clear across.
Bingo. Because this does, screening of the surface area, at least width, but it doesn't necessarily do height. Height stops at 8 foot, regardless of it's a 1-story, 2-story, 3-story.
but they're still gonna have it fenced in though too, correct?
No, I don't think
So that is the major difference that I saw between these two. There's no fencing requirement in Gage counties, but there is a fencing requirement on the colored page, number 11. Fencing up to 8 feet in height is permitted, provided the fencing material is predominantly open. For safety purposes, chain link fence, wildlife fence, or similar is required. So that is something, especially for, I mean, electrical grids. You get some of those substations that are out there, I mean, they've got razor wire, they've got everything to stop people. You're asking for issues for not having fencing.
Correct.
Come steal my catalytic converter.
There's something going for a joyride through there.
Exactly. So back to, so the berming is in lieu of trees, or is the berming
It would be in lieu of trees.
in lieu of trees?
If they use trees, it has to be 4 per 100 feet, we did 10. If they use
In lieu
berming,
of, in lieu of berming.
correct.
But the fences has to be one there, right?
In the Gage County, there's no fencing requirement whatsoever.
Well, I think we need one.
I don't disagree. As the person who prosecutes crimes, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, cause in here, I mean, Cass counties, they have screening and fencing.
Right.
But screening is, yeah, any,
Screening is to make it pretty, fencing is to make it secure. Now, I can't imagine that these companies aren't going to fence it themselves, but at the same time, the second you do that, you're gonna have somebody who wants to do a free-range solar farm.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's for egress, yeah, well, they'll have to have a lock that's provided, or a key that's provided to the fire department, and or probably the sheriff's department to get in. Correct? Which they would do anyways, hell,
Or an access panel of some sort.
Some code. I would think they would have that in their plan. Well, it'd have to, because that'd be part of their permit. That the commissioners would require, and they would require it.
Could
Could
require.
require it, should require it.
And I tend to trust in the wisdom of our Board of Commissioners, but the second that we don't put it in there, somebody's gonna forget about it on a conditional use permit 3 years down the line.
Right. Better to have it in black and white.
Yeah.
So, they don't burn, when we use trees, maybe we ought to set it, the height of the tree that's planted
at a minimum.
at a minimum.
Oh, 8-foot berm, 8-foot tree.
Oh, shit, yeah.
And where's all that dirt gonna come from? Harlow Hollow.
What's that?
Where's that 8-foot burn gonna come from?
The berm, right off the field. We're gonna cut I'm assuming they're gonna cut a waterway through there to control drainage, you're gonna have to, because they're gonna have a SWIP permit.
So when you decommission it, you're gonna have to clay.
That's
Or they have to put it back and restore it back to the way that it was,
It was,
which is one of the things that we'd require in our escrow account.
correct.
Yeah.
So you would just add that fencing verbiage to the construction operations?
Yes.
On 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and
I don't think you wanna,
So it all, yeah, it all fall under the
yeah,
2, 3, 4.
you don't wanna necessarily require that for somebody who's putting.
residential.
Yeah.
Right.
And if it were me, I'd buff up the verbiage on the fencing. I don't have good words on the top of my head, but theirs doesn't seem to be quite powerful enough.
So, when you using chain link was out.
This specifically allows for chain link.
Yeah, that one for the security, they said you can't use chain link fence for screening
For screening, but you use it for,
with the slats.
with this,
That one in Lincoln, it's got chain link fence and razor wire on top of it.
Yep. Which anymore is what you need. Otherwise, people are gonna get in there, gonna steal something.
they're gonna get the copper, or the precious metals are in there. That's, once again, that ain't our problem, but. I don't know. Why can't they, if they're gonna fence it, what's the harm in having a fence as screening?
Well, I think a lot of the screening come from, and they just made it very general, from non-participating property lines,
Correct.
and then, recreation area type stuff, churches.
Again, make it pretty versus make it secure.
Correct. Correct. I like that. Yeah.
But Cass Counties doesn't require the fencing either. It just says that it's permitted. They must have a fencing zoning regulation. So again, this one just permits it. It doesn't necessarily require it.
Require.
And again, if you've got a company who's gonna come in here and spend $50 million, they're gonna put a lock on the door.
You might assume.
And the second that we assume,
Yeah, yeah, so, yeah.
I would say definitely have some fits in verbiage added.
Once again, as far as the county goes, I don't give a shit if it gets stolen.
until it's my kid that decides to be stupid and go lick a solar array.
He's gonna climb the fence and do it anyways.
There's a will, there's a way.
I to a certain extent agree, but he's less likely to climb it if there's razor wire at the top than he is to just waltz in there.
So the ten drives forward through there. He blasted through. I mean, he did try it, so.
Any other discussions, additions to these proposals that we'd like to have drafted in?
If I might make a suggestion, might be worth it to, we've got discuss and act on our agenda. Might be worth it to assign somebody to draft this or to seek somebody to draft it.
Do we, because I was gonna say this, do we have to do that here, or, because I don't, I mean, yeah, we had the gentleman that, were last year that the Board of Supervisors worked with.
So we can just go about using it, using that person who was previously designated, or the board could designate somebody else to do it. I'm just trying to think logical next steps.
Because that's gonna
Much,
be our next timeframe, of what it takes them to start drafting it before we meet again to.
yes. We hope to have something by today. That was just under a month. If you hire somebody, it might go faster, but at the same instance, it's gonna take time.
Yep.
So completely up to you whether you wanna do that or not. But that would be our next step, would be set a new meeting and get something drafted so that we can then shoot it out to the public for public comment. And then possibly at our next, meeting, take public comment on what would be a working draft.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know, supervisors, do they gotta decide who that person is, or who they're gonna pay to draft that, or?
I think that would probably fall under the zoning administrator's purview, so I think I should be able to do
Okay.
that. But I would only do that in consultation with the commissioners.
Yeah, I'm
Right, yeah.
on board with somebody to draft it and start putting it together.
Okay.
I didn't feel that's the way to go.
And then I would assume, I don't know if we can take a set a date for a month from now and have it done, or
It's gonna
I would
just,
wait until we know that they're drafting and then,
I think that'd be the smart thing to do. Maybe set a goal for 45-ish days, but not necessarily nail down a date.
I agree.
So you will find somebody to draft this, or you're off?
Or I'll do it myself.
You do it yourself. Or your office will.
Yeah. As Mr. Trump would say, I have the best words, so.
All right, any other discussions? Next meeting, we'll roughly plan on 45 days, give us some time to find out who will draft, put it together, get it out to the public, and then have, public hearing at the next one to walk through it, working draft.
You have to have a motion?
Nope.
Good.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I guess I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.